Thursday. But Bob Whitcomb, as he always does, comes in and talks about the latest in news and politics.
I'll do a Ray impersonation without the melanin.
You're Ray. You're Bob Whitcomb.
I am, yeah.
And we always
appreciate
for
a little while.
For a little while until, who would you rather be? If you could be anybody else, who would you be?
I'd rather be. Let me see. I have to think about this for a little while. I don't know. Not Mother Teresa. I'm sure of that.
So let me put you on the spot.
FDR in March 1933.
Different time, different place, but same bat time,
Yeah.
same bat channel. We always have you here talking about last week's column, the one that you have coming up. Last week you had just touched upon, obviously, Harvey and Texas, because it was just
And it's fascinating. The climate side, that's weather, very natural variability, cool days, warm days, and this climate change. I think if this climate change involved in the Harvey disaster, which was mostly, of course, fresh water, not saltwater surge, was a couple of intriguing things. Usually when a hurricane is going over slowly over water, it churns up colder water from below, which tends to decrease its strength. In this case, the warm water extended all the way to the bottom of the Gulf. So even though it was going very, very slowly, it increased in speed. The other thing is that warm air, it's sort of basic physics or something, warm air holds more moisture than cooler air. So I think these two things could explain the deluge. Another thing is the whole infrastructure problem in places like Houston. Houston, by the way, is the largest American city with virtually no zoning. And so it's been uncontrolled development. They've paved over a lot of stuff. There are, shopping malls and parking lots and so on and so forth. And so all the water in what really is just a floodplain or kind of / glorified swamp, it all pours in and elsewhere and has exacerbated the flooding. If they had more parkland, grassland, woods, and especially marshland, to absorb all this extra water, they would have had.
So you think
trouble.
that urban planning or lack of urban planning had
lack
a
of
role in
urban
it?
planning. It's Texas, wide open development. We have a minor local example of what happens if you pave over too much stuff. Around the Patuxent River in Warwick, in the big flood a few years ago, the tremendous amount of paving over there. Everything's paved. And that's one reason the Patuxent overflow is such enthusiasm. For a while, the Patuxent looked like the Mississippi. I don't know if you remember that. It was quite
I don't recall,
exciting.
no.
Yeah, quite exciting.
So do you think we've learned lessons? Do you think lessons were learned from Katrina? Do you think we'll see rebuilding on places that were flooded over? Do you think we'll see a shift in Houston?
I think there'll be a slow shift. Very difficult to fight the development, energy in Texas. They don't believe in regulations. They do believe, however, in federal aid when they're disasters.
They're going to need some aid.
Senator Cruz, of course, was very unhappy with getting all this aid in the Northeast for Sandy. He claimed that they'd added all this other stuff onto it. It had nothing to do with Sandy, which somebody deconstructed the bill, and that wasn't true. So now they're probably going to need more aid for Texas and Louisiana than New Jersey needed for Sandy.
Well, we'll see moving forward. Obviously, it's still going on now. It's a horrible situation.
They've got to change the development pattern. You need more land that acts as a sponge to absorb this moisture. Of course, 52 inches of rain is pretty biblical, that overused expression.
Biblical.
52 inches.
Yeah, biblical.
The worst flood we ever had in New England was probably 1955 Hurricane Diane, a kind of dying hurricane. They got, I think, 20 inches in the northern part of Connecticut, which caused horrific damage, in the river valley.
And we have a hurricane anniversary here.
Today, Hurricane Carol. Yeah, very exciting. I remember it. I even remember the smell of the air. It smelled like cedar.
When it was happening, just before it started?
I was just a little boy, but it smelled like cedar, and that's the effect of this thing going over the Gulf Stream. So it smells very kind of tropical wet, and in fact, what you were smelling was the Gulf Stream.
Wow. And speaking of waters, you wrote last week about the proliferation of sharks in New England and sort of the approach that folks are taking. Yeah. What needs to be done? Or should it just be nature and take its course?
Nature and tooth and, was it red and tooth and claw? Remember that? One guy who's Beatty is his name, is the Cape Cod Commission, who I remember not so fondly because he helped block the Cape Wind project. He wants to put these special shark killing devices offshore. I think that's a good idea. It's all, nature is interconnected. there are ways, very simple ways of avoiding being eaten by a white shark.
Listen up closely, folks.
For one thing, stay away from where there's seals. They like to eat seals. Those cute little dog-like animals. That's their favorite food is seals. Okay, so, and be leery of going out too deep. Especially great white sharks. They like to come from the bottom. They're bottom feeders, so to speak, and they come shooting up and attack from the bottom. So.
Speaking of waters,
Yeah.
Bailey's Beach Club.
Yeah, Bailey's Beach. Yeah, the Sheldon White House crisis. Now Sheldon is not officially a member of the Bailey's Beach. We should admit this, but I guess his very pleasant wife, scientist Sandra, is a member. So Sheldon's got all these sort of political problems because, of course, Bailey's Beach is all white and all rich. And Democrats are supposed to be, in general, the way they've always presented themselves, I think with some rough accuracy, as tribunes of the poor and the middle class and of ethnic minorities. So that could be a problem. Senator Whitehouse is running for re-election next year, so that's a tough one because I understand they live very close to it, it's very convenient, and it's his wife who's the member. But of course, he gets full access to it. I've been to Bailey's Beach a few times. I could not afford to be a member, nor really would I demand to be a member.
Do you go to Rejects Beach?
I go to Rejects Beach. Actually, I go to a beach called Barney's Joy in Buzzards Bay, which is beautiful. It's got a farm behind it. And you can't get in.
Literally or figuratively?
Yeah. Well, you can't get in. They have a very limited number of members. It's not based on money at all. I think it's a couple $100 a year, the dues.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we have one more summer weekend.
Yeah.
That's
right.
it. It's supposed to be a beach day on Monday.
Yeah.
Speaking
great.
of things winding to a close, we have, as I said, one of the official arbiters of cool behind the studio here, Rudy Cheeks.
I've known Rudy for many, many years. We shared a cell at Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, and we had a great time. That's where he taught. That's how I learned how to play backgammon. So,
you never know what Bob's going to say.
Yeah.
But he's going to talk about the legacy of BRU on the radios.
Yeah, that's too bad. It's being bought by a Christian outfit, Christian station.
I know you asked, is that a right-wing Christian radio station? I asked, is there such thing as a left-wing Christian radio station?
Maybe there is, I don't know. Maybe it's some sort of, liberation theology like the Pope. And it's too bad. They have very good signal, and I always hope that the local NPR would buy it. That would make a lot of sense, which has to expand its broadcasting. In fact, they're doing it another way with an arrangement over in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that was sort of the natural thing to do, would be to take over that station. But the board over there and the kids over there running it was a little chaotic.
So we'll see what happens, K-Rock tomorrow. But let's look ahead to this weekend. You've got your reporter's notepad here with notes. What are we going to expect from Bob Whitcomb?
It's all Braille. But I don't know how to read Braille. They say, what do we get? Oh yeah, one thing. I commented. The big demonstration in Boston against the little group of alleged right wingers. I've decided that was pretty silly. There are so few of them, and there were like 40,000 other people. And I thought, they really did quash their free speech.
There's been that response and backlash, but then there's also the justification that folks after, especially the young woman was killed, that felt the need to show up in force and numbers to say, we won't tolerate this. But then there's those who said...
There were so few of them. It was sort of a joke.
But do you think they maybe didn't know that, again, the emails went out and said, come up to Boston, maybe we thought they'd be 200 or 300. What do you have to say, though? There was definitely some pictures and video of some of those who had shown up giving the police a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, which side? The counter-demonstrators?
The counter-demonstrators.
Yeah, I just thought the whole thing was a bit silly. I think there's a huge amount of political and historical ignorance in this country, and I think that's the biggest problem. They don't know how the government works. They don't know about what the Bill of Rights is. I think that's the problem. I think very, very few people are, neo-Nazis, KKK people. It's not the problem. The problem we have in politics and, vis-a-vis extremism in the United States, it's just willful ignorance about pretty much everything.
Do you have concerns for the future of free speech in the country?
Well, I have a lot of concerns for the future of our republic, frankly. Yeah, decaying.
I'm assuming that's a major focal point. I mean, how does one boy lay down for a weekend column?
The amount of general ignorance of what should be general knowledge about their country, about the way government works, it's supposed to work, about our history is staggering. And
So-
I find this very distressing, but.
The Boston event, what else do you have in your braille
Okay,
notes
what
here?
else? Oh, yeah, the collapse of the pension fund at St. Joseph's, I think that's, that kind of thing, a church fund, that should be under ERISA. You know what ERISA is? That's the government
Yep.
regulation. That should have always been under ERISA. They should change the law so all these church funds and municipal funds go under ERISA.
Like a lesson learned, it should be,
Oh, yeah.
yes, at this
And
stage in the game.
I think that's probably just negligence. I doubt very much.
Do you think it's
corruption. I doubt.
and the part, well, let's talk about the role of the Catholic Church, who has
Yeah.
yet to actually issue a
Yeah,
statement
nobody's
yet.
really said anything yet. have they? Yeah,
Hopefully
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
be able to talk soon with someone,
Yeah.
but do you think that it's a moral failure on the part of the church?
Well, yeah, I think to look after the interest of their retirees, and some of these funds have. My wife was sort of employed. She taught in a Catholic school, and I think in her part of it, it seems to be fine. But I think there is both a moral and certainly a legal fiduciary obligation to look after this stuff, to follow this. Was it 90% of its value? Something like it was just implausible.
It's staggering. It was supposed to be
Staggering.
90% funded, excuse me, 3
Yeah,
years ago.
Yeah, and apparently nobody was putting money into it. And then there's the issue of how is it invested? What kind of diversified, what do they have, Polish airlines in there or something?
I said,
fake Krugerrands, underwater, real estate 28 miles east of Miami.
But here's sort of the big question, one of the final questions.
Yeah.
There have been a number of leaders who have called on an independent investigation, because as we know, the AG's office had signed off on the hospital
Yeah, they
conversion
should have
act.
been overseeing it. Yeah.
But, we
should
have
have
yet to hear, the
overseen it.
governor has not said, I think I asked her yesterday, and she said, well, that's the AG's decision. But if the AG had signed off on it, do we need an independent investigation? Someone from the outside to come in and say, this is how, can the AG investigate himself?
I would say you need somebody, hopefully it wouldn't cost an arm and a leg, somebody from the outside to come in. Might be somebody from Price Waterhouse or one of the big accounting firms. I think a little forensic audit would be helpful.
I think folks are asking for questions.
And
asking
nobody's
for answers.
perfect, don't get me wrong,
No.
but when you're not, something like this, and most of these people, the beneficiaries, are not affluent people.
No. Well, hopefully we'll get some
Yeah,
answers.
yeah.
GoLocal has been at the forefront of writing on this issue,
I know.
probably about
Certainly
10
have.
stories at this
I
stage.
know.
But the largest pension failure, I see folks on social media, they point to pension reform. That wasn't a pension failure, but,
Yeah, yeah.
pensions is a hot button topic here in the
Yeah.
state, and there's people's lives are
Well,
impacted.
there are a lot of retired people, and having a pension, in addition to a little Social Security stuff, the difference between poverty and a marginal middle class retirement.
Well, we'll see what you have to
Yeah.
write about this weekend, Labor Day
Okay.
weekend. Any big plans? You going to go to Buzzards Bay?
Let me see. I thought actually I'd submit to 3 days of electroshock therapy, prepare myself for the fall.
Get ready for the fall.
I'm gonna go to Barney's, Joey. Yeah, no sharks there so far as I know. There are shark-like people there sometimes, but no
Land
sharks,
shark.
no.
Land shark.
Portuguese men of war. that kind of stuff.
Be careful whatever you're up to. Appreciate your coming in.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Thank
go
you.
around
You
the
too.
corner and get a little more water here.
Okay,
as
yeah,
a-
water, yeah.
Getting set for my next guest. So Bob Whitcomb, have a great Labor Day weekend.
Happy fall.
Well, almost there when you come back. It's a nice day here downtown in the Navigate Credit